If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description.
This right here is my favorite thing ever in the history of forever. I think about this every day. I think about this all night long. I stay awake, not sleeping, because I'm thinking about this.
Team Ladybug have outdone themselves with Blade Chimera. It's easily the best Metroidvania they've produced to date, and that's saying something because their portfolio is impressive. Touhou Luna Nights has one of the most unique battle systems in an MV, and Record of Lodoss War, Deedlit, and Wonder Labyrinth had people saying it reminded them of Symphony of the Night. I certainly don't agree with that, but I think we can all agree with one thing. Phenomenal presentation is a Team Ladybug hallmark, and Blade Chimera is no exception. In Blade Chimera, you play as Shin, an amnesiac super soldier who's been thawed from a 30-year cryogenic sleep and flung into a dystopian world run by religion and demons. And how does old Shin fight these demons?
Nanomachine, son!
Also with another demon named Lux. As decreed by the papal figure Lord Baal, Shin is tasked with slaying every titanic demon in the land. But little does he know, his toughest fight won't be against a demon, but his struggle with faith. Demons, a corrupt theocracy, a resistance group, conspiracies. What else could this game have to make it better?
Nanomachine, son!
Alright, let's go!
Combat.
Blade Chimera's combat can be summed up in one simple phrase: cheap and easy. And while that might not be a great thing to say about your mother, it's definitely a good thing to say about a video game. What I mean by cheap and easy is that combat in Blade Chimera is straightforward, satisfying, requires very little effort to enjoy, and isn't overly difficult. Just like your mom. Sometimes you just want to pick up an action game and absolutely obliterate some demons without too much thought. And Blade Chimera delivers on that power fantasy. It's stupidly satisfying just running around and mercilessly shredding your opponents apart. But don't get too cocky. Shin is a total glass cannon. He can definitely dish it out, but he cannot take it. So you gotta be careful out there, lest you become the shreddee and not the shredder. Thankfully, Shin has an incredible repertoire to keep himself safe and his enemies slaughtered. He's got himself a sword for up and close encounters, and guns for when he doesn't feel like running all the way over to a demon to stab it. Each weapon has a dedicated button, and you can equip 2 swords or 2 guns if you want. There are many different types of each weapons, and each type affects your playstyle. On the melee side, there are mainly swords, great swords, and whips, each coming with their own animations and movesets. I highly preferred the great swords because you could literally float in the air during aerial combos. Guns mostly come in semi-automatic and automatic, with some also having special attributes, such as the amphibious gun that lets you shoot underwater without dying. That's a pretty neat feature, I'd say. If you've played Team Ladybug games before, then you know how satisfying hitting enemies is in their games. A lot of the satisfaction can be attributed to how enemies react to getting hit. They do this tiny shake when you hit them, there's this punchy impact noise, a number will pop up on screen letting you know how much damage you've done, and enemies die with some cool animations. In Blade Chimera, they crumble into ash, and it looks very cool. One of my favorite things to do in Team Ladybug's previous game, Deedlit, was to hang back and unload arrows into enemies. And Blade Chimera brings that great feeling back, but on steroids. While Deedlit's arrows were limited to her MP, Shin's firearms are limited only to their clip size. And with unlimited reloads, there's really nothing holding you back from filling everything up with lead. Well, plasma mostly, but eventually lead. Or silver? Whatever. Point is, shooting is fun and comes with nearly 0 repercussions. Shooting is fun and comes with 1 repercussion. Swords and guns aren't Shin's only means of attack. He also has the demon Lux by his side, and boy, does she bring a lot to the table. Sometimes she even brings the table, but I'll leave that for the next section. As far as combat goes, Lux is a powerhouse. She can be thrown at enemies to deal damage and replenish Shin's HP, a mechanic you'll rely on. She can also be stabbed into surfaces and summoned back, dealing massive damage to anything in her return path. The further away she is when summoned, the harder she hits, making this one of the most fun and rewarding mechanics in the game. Lux also boasts a suite of MP-based magical attacks, which you'll replenish by landing basic hits, creating a satisfying synergy between Shin and his demonic partner. And then there's Lux's most useful move, her shield. By thrusting her into the ground, Lux creates a barrier that blocks most projectiles, and this absolutely breaks the game. Throwing up a barrier and shooting enemies from afar is a near unstoppable strategy that'll carry you through the game. Normally, this would be a bad thing, but it was so fun to do, I didn't mind it one bit. But this strategy didn't work against the bosses. Not that it needed to. Bosses in Blade Chimera are all bark and no bite. While bosses are massive and boast some impressive designs, they don't pose much of a challenge. A couple encounters have this gimmick that requires you to do something to finish them off. It doesn't do too much to make the fights harder, but it does keep the fights fresh. That is, when they worked.
So my game recording just stopped, but I wanted to capture this somehow. I just beat this boss, and I don't know, my controller's unresponsive, and it's just like flying there or something. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I still have my Christmas tree up.
That's it for this section. Blade Chimera's combat isn't about grueling difficulty or steep learning curves. It's about making you feel like a total badass while shredding through the enemies with a powerful arsenal and a demon lady who's just as deadly as you are. It's simple, stylish, and ridiculously fun.
Abilities. Platforming.
This is going to be a weird section because Blade Chimera is kind of a weird game. Firstly, let's get abilities out of the way. You do not unlock abilities in Blade Chimera. You earn them. Every time Shin levels up, he gets a skill point he can use on a skill tree, and in this skill tree lies your traversal abilities. Slide, double jump, higher double jump, and the world's best air dash. Seriously, you literally fly through the air with this thing. It's amazing. I'm not a fan of gaining traversal abilities through skill trees. What if I took another path on the tree and unlocked Lux's abilities instead? Now I'm out of slide and double jump until I grind enough levels to unlock them. To compensate for this, there isn't any ability gating throughout the entirety of the game. Sure, you can backtrack and use these abilities to find secrets and access areas that you couldn't without these skills, but I'm fairly certain the critical path doesn't require them. Making traversal abilities essentially optional ultimately makes some bland level design that never really evolves because it doesn't have to. Thus, there are no areas that will test your skills on the infinite air dash, and that, frankly, is a huge letdown. There are other abilities Lux brings from the outset that helps with platforming, like stabbing her into a wall so you can have a new platform to jump on, and using her as a grappling hook at designated points. Lux also has this interesting mechanic where she can quote-unquote return objects to a previous state of being, which basically means she rewinds time on stuff. For instance, during a couple of fights, Lux can make an object manifest for Shin to use as cover. It's a really neat idea, but I don't think it was utilized to its fullest. I can only think of a few times when you needed to use this mechanic during battle, and only a handful of times during exploration. While exploring, you'll come up against your usual MB staples, locked doors that need keys, locked doors that unlock with a switch, and lots of environmental BS, like spikes, a dark area, swimming, and lava. The most unique trap you'll have to deal with are UV lights, which are deadly to demons. If you go in these areas with Lux, she'll die pretty quickly. And if she dies, it's game over. Navigating these spots could be semi-challenging, but on the whole, there's nothing here that's going to tax your brain on a platforming or puzzle front. Which is a shame because Shin and Lux have so many movement options and goofy techs that, had the devs embraced this, we could have been given some of the most insane and wacky platforming sections ever. I'm not saying the platforming would be good, but it would be fun and memorable. And that's it for this section. Blade Chimera's abilities and platforming mechanics have so much potential, but they ultimately feel underutilized. With traversal skills locked behind a skill tree and no significant ability gating on the critical path, the level design lacks the depth and creativity to make the most of Shin and Lux's impressive movement options. While the infinite air dash and Lux's platforming mechanics are undeniably fun to use, they're never put to the test in a way that challenges or surprises the player. It's a missed opportunity for sure, but the foundation is solid and what's there is still enjoyable. Even if it doesn't quite reach the heights it could have.
Progression.
I've pretty much mentioned a lot of what Blade Chimera has when it comes to the progression side of things. Shin can level up, he gets skill points for a skill tree to unlock different moves and abilities, and he has stats he can improve with gear. Gear comprises mainly swords and guns, but you can also equip cassette tapes and floppy disks. I'm not really sure what that's about, so I just imagined Shin was like Teddy Ruxpin and he just inserts cassettes into his back. There are other interesting accessories you can get besides cassettes, like a suit that lets you swim better and a bulletproof vest that negates all damage for a few hits. There are even foodstuffs and deadly weapons enemies can drop, and you all know how fun random enemy drops can be. One of my Discord buddies said he found a fire shotgun, and honestly, I've never been more jealous in my life. Blade Chimera has a healthy economy in its couple of weapons vendors and all the vending machines strewn about its world. I never had an issue with money though. If I wanted to buy all the ice cream in a vending machine, I always wiped it out. So if I was near death, I'd whip out one of those fucked up looking Sonic ice cream bars mid-fight and be good to go in seconds. You can get money by defeating enemies, but the real cash comes from doing side quests. Blade Chimera has a ton of quests you can choose from at any save point in the game, but you can only do one quest at a time, which wasn't a big deal considering this game's fast travel, but more on that in the next section. The side quests in this game are actually pretty diverse. You got your stinkers in there like kill X demons in this biome and kill X red demons, which just straight up sounds racist. But then there are more substantial quests like find the slaver and answer my riddle by finding a code in the environment. These were kinda neat, and every quest gave you at least an approximation of where you needed to go to complete it. Mainly the reward for doing these quests was cash, but not always. Some gave some really interesting story bits with unique cutscenes, while others ended with an optional boss fight. And after completing a quest, you'd receive an email from the client that sometimes held some tantalizing world building and foreshadowing for the plot. Overall, I liked the side quests in Blade Chimera a lot. You never really knew what you might get out of them. That's it for this section. Blade Chimera's progression system is varied, rewarding, and doesn't take itself too seriously. From leveling up and skill trees to quirky gear like cassette tapes and random enemy drops, there's always something to experiment with. The game's economy is balanced, with side quests offering a steady flow of cash and intriguing rewards, whether it's unique story beats or even optional bosses. While not groundbreaking, the progression keeps things engaging and adds a fun layer of predictability to Shin's journey through this bizarre, demon-filled world.
Exploration.
I loved exploring Blade Chimera's world. Not only did every biome look great with some nicely animated backgrounds thrown in here and there, but the game's fast travel was on a whole other level. One of the first abilities you can unlock in the skill tree is the ability to warp. I didn't know how to use it at first, but man, when I discovered the full extent of warp's power, it was incredible. I won't bury the lead. You can warp almost everywhere. Not just to other save points, not just to waypoints like the subways. You can warp to every single little square on this screen whenever you want, with exceptions being gray areas and when the narrative doesn't allow you to warp to certain places. Other than that, you have free reign to go wherever. It's an unprecedented amount of freedom for an MV that makes backtracking a thing of the past. No longer do you have to hike anywhere. Simply click where you want to go on the map and you're there. I think this kind of fast travel system might be divisive to MV fans. On one hand, we like to revisit old areas. Backtracking offers moments of reflection, allows us to see things with more experienced eyes, to possibly find more secrets, and it gives us the opportunity to see how far we've progressed by seeing how fast we can kill these older enemies now. But on the other hand, backtracking has always been viewed as a necessary evil that needs to be balanced just right so you don't frustrate players. Heck, I know plenty of people who don't play MVs because they can't stand backtracking at all. Whatever your stance is on backtracking, Blade Chimera has your back. You want to backtrack the old-fashioned way? Have at it. You want to use instant transmission to get where you want to go now? It's all yours, Goku. Personally, I loved it. It works for Blade Chimera because the game's focus is on combat, not exploration. So if I wanted to warp to a spot so I could finish a side quest real quick, I was thankful for the option. Plus, the game even uses the warp ability in interesting ways to grant you access to some things, but you didn't hear that from me. Now, I know I just said the game's focus is on combat and not exploration, but that doesn't mean the game's exploration isn't rewarding. There are tons of things you can find, like new weapons, food, accessories, HP and MP increases, key items for quests, and probably the most important item, puzzle pieces. Puzzle pieces are scattered all over the place, sometimes hidden, sometimes not, sometimes as rewards for side quests. There are 56 in total, and the in-game map tells you how many are left in a biome. Throughout your journey, you'll find doors with a number on them, indicating how many pieces you'll need to open that door. There's always something awesome behind each door, so it's a good idea to mark up your map so you can revisit later and get what's inside. Teasing me with locked doors is bound to get me hooked on your MV, and with the rewards being largely worth it, I was always excited with each new piece found. And I'll just say it now, if you want to see the game's true ending, you're gonna need to collect all 56 pieces. So keep your eyes peeled. I guess I'll end with the in-game map. It's blocky and undetailed, but it works well enough. Biomes are color-coded and you can mark it up, so that's a nice touch. Objectives are automatically placed on the map for you for both main and side objectives, so you never have to worry about getting lost. As for the game's linearity, yes, it is very linear with story gating, but you can pretty much go anywhere you want as long as the story doesn't bar you. For instance, I had already explored the recycling center before the plot asked me to go there, so I literally just teleported straight to the boss when the time came. That's it for exploration. Blade Chimera strikes a fine balance between accessibility and discovery. With its unparalleled fast travel system, you can explore on your terms, warp instantly across the map, or backtrack the old-fashioned way. While the game focuses more on combat than exploration, the abundance of secrets, rewarding collectibles like puzzle pieces, and the excitement of unlocking doors to hidden treasures make every journey through its stunning biomes worthwhile. Whether you're here for the loot, the lore, or just to finish a side quest in record time, Blade Chimera makes exploration feel fluid, rewarding, and completely on your schedule.
Atmosphere. Narrative.
This is a Team Ladybug game. Presentation-wise, you should know what you're getting. Top-tier pixel work with smooth animations, amazing enemy and boss designs, a diverse array of eye-catching colors, and a punchy, arcade-like vibe from its music and sound design. Team Ladybug really has their own feel, and that feeling has been refined to the nth degree for Blade Chimera. The game looks, feels, and sounds amazing, despite the fact that it takes place in a dystopian theocratic hellscape. As for the narrative, it's pretty good stuff. Its delivery is notable in that the game uses many different ways to express its story. Dialogue, flashbacks, memory archives, emails from clients. Blade Chimera has some pretty good world building. You'll love to see it because this was not the case with the previous games, though I suspect that's because Blade Chimera is an original IP from Team Ladybug themselves and not something that they licensed. Its story beats are predictable and its twists you'll largely see coming from a mile away, except for one that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But overall, I dug the story. It's fine if a story hits your expectations instead of subverting them or offering anything new, when the rest of what's on offer is great, such as the presentation and gameplay. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't choke up a little during the base ending. That's right, we got ourselves some multiple endings, boys. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'll say that the true ending is actually post-game content. So you'll have to witness the base ending before journeying toward the true ending. And I found both endings to be great, though the true ending got me looking at a certain character differently. My only real critique on the narrative is the twist I'm still wrapping my head around. I'm not upset I'm still wrestling with what happened. I'm upset with how freaking slow this part was. It is easily the worst part in the game, and it's not even close. It's an absolute pace killer. A baffling decision for sure. And that's it for this section. Blade Chimera delivers a masterclass in presentation, with Team Ladybug's signature pixel art, stellar animations, and arcade-inspired sound design bringing vibrancy to its dystopian world. While the narrative doesn't break new ground, its emotional beats and multiple endings make it a satisfying experience overall. Just be prepared for a major pace killer during one specific twist. That said, the game's atmosphere, combined with its engaging story and memorable visuals, ensures you'll stay invested from start to finish.
Final thoughts and score.
Blade Chimera is an ambitious and stylish Metroidvania that leans heavily into satisfying combat, vibrant pixel art, and a unique sense of freedom and exploration. While its platforming and level design don't fully utilize the potential of its impressive movement mechanics, the game more than makes up for it with thrilling gameplay, a rewarding progression system, and an atmospheric world brought to life by Team Ladybug's signature polish. The narrative may not be groundbreaking, but its emotional beats, engaging world building, and multiple endings leave a lasting impression. With a fast travel system that feels like a game changer for the genre, and combat that's as empowering as it is entertaining, Blade Chimera proves to be a fun, if imperfect, entry in the Metroidvania space. I award Blade Chimera a 9 out of 10. Blade Chimera is currently on PC and Nintendo Switch. It took me about 9 hours to get the base ending and about another hour to get the true ending, bringing my total gameplay to a little over 10 hours with 99% map coverage. I played Blade Chimera exclusively on the Steam Deck with zero issues other than that one weird glitch I shared earlier. Therefore, I give Blade Chimera a Steam Deck rating of verified.
Tier placement.
This is where things are gonna get kinda weird for people who aren't familiar with my ranking system. Giving Blade Chimera a 9 out of 10 means it's a great game. In this case, a great sci-fi action platformer. If you're an action platformer fan, then you're gonna love Blade Chimera. But if you're an MV fan, that might be a whole different story. The point of my tier list is to help MV fans and newcomers to the genre prioritize what games they should play first. It's an imperfect system, and I'm currently working on a new, more accurate grading system, but it works well enough for now. That said, looking at Blade Chimera strictly as an MV, it's still pretty good, but it's clear being an action platformer with MV elements is a better description for it than a Metroidvania. Its level design doesn't flow or ramp up like a traditional MV should, and it's mostly story-gated instead of utility-gated. That's not to say it's a bad game or even a bad Metroidvania. I think it's a great game and a good Metroidvania. That said, Blade Chimera warps itself into the C tier. Some might consider C tier as a harsh placement for such a great game, but it's not a punishment, I swear. I'm just saying Blade Chimera is an average MV when compared to others in the space. It doesn't rewrite the Metroidvania rulebook, but it confidently blazes its own trail with a focus on fun, freedom, and frantic demon-slaying action. If you're a fan of Team Ladybug's previous work, or just want a game where you can obliterate enemies with style, you can put your faith in Blade Chimera.